All right, so this game, I am against Jeskai Fires Yorion. You remember if you were a viewer that was here. Hey, thanks SJU. If you remember, the last day of testing in Pioneer, I did not want to play Mono Green. I just wanted anything, but all I was doing as I was testing Mono Green and getting blasted. I was just losing every time. And I'm like, okay, I tried Jeskai Fires the last day. And I'm like, okay, this deck looks good. I couldn't get the mana to work. Yeah, I couldn't get the mana to work in Jeskai Fires. I thought I was saying I needed a day to work on the mana. Um, to make like, and that's what I would have played if I had an extra day. Obviously, I'm glad that didn't happen, but so I'm against Jeskai Fires, and so what the goal is Karn for Grafdigger's Cage, right? Because they have Agent of Treachery and Transmogrifying and Luca, and a bunch of token makers, and they have no creatures in the deck but Agent of Treachery. So I need to go find. I need to go find Grafdigger's Cage and play it. That's just like it's just like I'm against Oops All Spells. It's just like I need to just play Karn. I mulliganed into a hand that had turn 3 Nissa. I'm like, okay, well, maybe that's good enough. Okay, got the Karn. Now we've got Grafdigger's Cage on non next turn. Let's go. Oh, and to turn Omen to the Sun. This isn't good news. Well, maybe they only have tap lands. Oh, nope. Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, no. All right, well. Don't have a lot of options here. We are kind of ice cold. Kind of ice cold. But I'm like, okay, well, enemy has a fires in play. Maybe no. Let's Pithy Needle this Nissa. Maybe they have nothing in hand. And yeah, that's yeah. Did you know that this was a standard combo, by the way? You notice how new? Notice how very 2020 our opponent's cards are in Pioneer. I wonder why. This was a standard deck, by the way, before they banned Agent of Treachery. But as you might expect, enemy can like go get Yorion, play it, flicker all their cards, and Agent of Treachery, steal whatever they want. Yeah. And the thing is, the Yorion, it's free because they can pay 3 the companion tax to get it in their hand, but they have 5 lands, so Fires makes it free. So, as you might imagine, I've had enough. I have had enough. So, all right, new plan. Our new plan. Our new plan is to play Karn, play Grafdigger's Cage. Let's start from there. All right, let's start from there. was my mindset. I'm like, I got unlucky. I was on the draw. If I'm on the play, I probably win that one. So, okay, this is a 33% chance of having Karn on turn 3. Enemy mulligan to 5. We got this. Those are the odds, by the way. If you're on the play and you have an Oath of Nissa, because you have 53 cards in your deck, and you're looking at 5 cards, right? If you want to play turn 3 Karn, you have 2 draw steps, and you have Oath of Nissa, right? So you're looking at 5 cards, so it's 4 out of 53, 5 cards. Your odds are 40%. Or 33%, I'm sorry, 33%. Let me make sure I'm geometric. Because I did the math on this. Where's my hypergeometric calculator? I have the link somewhere. Where'd it go? Oh, here it is. Yeah, it's 33%. Right. So this bottom one is what you're looking at. 33%. With 2 Athanessas, let me look at it. With 2 Athanessas, you're at 50%. Exactly 50. Like 49.1. 49.1. So I'm taking the land here instead of the old Gargaroth because if they agent a treachery other Gargaroth, I'm actually dead. So let's not deal with that. Yes, the odds of hitting if you try to mulligan for a Karn, I'll show you the odds of mulliganing to a Karn. So the odds of mulliganing to a Karn are 40%, 39.9. So if you have an opening hand of just like mana and an Oath of Nissa, it's very likely to be correct to keep it. If you need to Karn the matchup. Because this doesn't take into account the fact that you also have to like not only have Karn but actually have an acceleration and 4 lands to, like 4 mana to cast it, right? So it's actually way less than 40. It's like 30 some odd percent. So if your opening hand is, and that's why I ended up doing in the finals, right? I ended up keeping a hand of just like Oath of Nissa and lands, and I ended up getting there with the Karn, right? There's no point in mulliganing a Karn if you have an Oath of Nissa in your opening hands. So they bounced a Wolfalo Haven so that I potentially didn't have mana. So now this number doesn't take into account the fact if you plan on mulliganing to 5. If you plan on mulliganing to 5 looking for Karn, the number is a little bit higher than this. It's not much higher. So it's like the difference between like 33% and like 42, 43%. So it's not insignificant. Which is why I think in the finals when I was on the draw, I mulliganed to 5. But when I was on the play, I did not. Is what I think I did. Alright, so the Ether Gustidus, after we drew. So I'm like, okay, do I really want to draw this Nissa? They can Transmogrify next turn. We really would rather draw a Karn, right? And the thing is, I have this Elves Visionary. There's a lot more Visionary I want to play, so like I don't really want to draw Nissa that I can't play. But can I just kill them? Right? Can I just kill them here? So this is during our draw step. I'm against our opponent mulligan to 5. I'm against Jeskai Fires. What do we do? They Aether Gusted us in our draw step, so we can't make a land. We can't draw this turn and play it. It's a weird spot. Enemies at 15. They're putting over into play next turn. They could potentially Transmogrify that into Native Treachery. I end up doing the math, and I'm like, okay, let's see what I say.
Enemy has no Supreme Verdicts in their main deck.
Oh, that's right. I have audios. Yeah, there's a reason why we don't have it. We don't listen to the audio.
Good.
Because like Discord was constantly fighting for my mic, so it was just like flickering. It was bad.
It's in the top or no? I can attack for 2 and play. Attack for 5. I'm knocking to 10.
So I can attack them for 5, right? Attack them for 5 and play a massive Hydra. So they're at 10, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mana. I can make an 8/9 Hydra, right? And I have an 8/9 Hydra. They block the 8/9 Hydra with their 0/4. They take 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I have exact lethal. I have exact lethal. I also have Burning Tree Emissary, so I have 2 more than lethal if I just play a massive Hydra.
And then play. I have 1, 2, 5, 6. So play an 8. So I guess.
Let's just put this back on mute. The audio issues are too bad. That's why I'm not uploading these. Anyways. Let's just make the massive Hydra, and if they have it, then they have it. Let's make them have it. They mulligan to 5. There's a chance they don't have it, right? So when I play this deck, they're an 80 card deck. Like, it's not actually that likely for them to have it. And another reason I put it on the bottom is I'm like, okay, if they have, I know enemy has Angers of the Gods as your sweeper. So if they Aether Gust our Nissa, then they untap an Anger of the Gods. I'm iced. I don't have 5 mana. Right? And I got a dead draw. I'm a real bad spot. But I think that's another reason to put the card in the put the Nissa on the bottom rather. So enemy goes pretty deep in the tank. I don't know how long they thought. They thought for a really long time. Really, really long time. So they end up cycling a Shark Typhoon for 0. Looking for, I guess, a land? Okay, so they got it. I mean, they may have drawn Chain of the Rocks. So they chain the rocks. Our Hydra. I'm like, okay, now the coast is clear. We know they don't have Transmogrify. If they do, it's because they drew it. Let's just play all of our creatures. They don't have Anger of the Gods. I think they would have played that too. Because they could have played that instead of the Chain of the Rocks. Let's just like play idiot creatures. Make a token. This is a good sign. They're at 1. Let's go. All right. But yeah, the decision after they drew step Aether Gustidus was like, okay, if they have Transmogrify, I can't win. We don't play around that. What can we beat? Like, okay, let's put them dead on board, force them to have something. And they just didn't have it. And this matches up my expectation with when I tested the deck. I tested this exact deck for like 5 hours or something the last day of testing before deck submission. I actually, like, deck submission was due by 12:59. I tested this deck up to like midnight, right? It was insane. I tested for like the entire night. I'm like, okay, I want to play Jeskai Fires. I'm like, I can't get the mana to work. And I kept on mulliganing to 5, looking for like playable hands that had mana and spells. So like, the fact that I did all that testing against the Jeskai Fires deck with the Jeskai Fires deck means like I kind of knew its weaknesses, and I kind of understood like how inconsistent it really is and how much of a big problem the mana base was. Because the mana base my opponent was using was the unmodified mana base that I criticized, that I critiqued. The one that had 8 Triumphs and 3 Castles. And no Castle Lemurias. Or Miria's Calls, rather. So they were on the version of Jeskai Fires that I started with, like, at the beginning of my testing. So I'm like, I know that they have so many tap lands and their mana is so bad. They have 4 Sulfur Falls, 3 Plains, 3 White Castles. Like, half their lands come to play on tapped. It's crazy. Like, you have problems casting 2 spells before turn 4 a lot of the time. So I end up boarding out Elder Gargaros on the draw because I'm like, okay, if they steal this, I can't win. So I'm like, okay, Elder Gargarot's gone. I'm like, okay, Heart of Kirin, if they steal that, who cares? And it's actually like pretty good against Narset and 3 Fairy. So let's like bring that in. I'm like, okay. Enemy mulligans. So I'm like, okay. This hand does nothing. The enemy's deck really cannot beat Karn. Karn into Grafdigger's Cage. I know because I know from my testing. I played against mono green players. They Karn into Grafdigger's Cage. I'm like, oh, all I can do is Teferi bounce it. And if they just Pithy Needle Teferi, I literally cannot win. I'm like, okay. Bam! Mulligan to 6, found Karn, let's go. So in this hand, what do we put on the bottom? What do we put on the bottom? We have turn 3 Karn. So, but what do we, if we put a Burnt Emissary in the bottom, we can put either Burnt Emissary in the bottom or you can put Oath of Nissa on the bottom, right? Because we can go turn 2 Wolf Willow Haven. But here's the thing. If we put Burning Tree Emissary on the bottom, if our Oath of Nissa does not hit a land, we cannot turn 3 Karn. Right? If we just look at this hand, we can go without if you just hide the Oath of Nissa, you can just go Forest go. Next turn, Nykthos, play Wolf Willow Haven on the forest. Next turn, Emissary. You have 5 mana. Karn, Grafdigger's Cage. Right? So I actually don't need Oath of Nissa. Right. Oath of Nissa doesn't actually contribute anything to this hand. All it does is introduce an element of variance. Like, I could many times over the tournament, I Oath of Nissa and bricked. I didn't hit a land. Right? Or I can hit a Nykthos, which is also useless to me. So why do that? So like, Oath of Nissa, see you later. Like, I have turn 3 Karn with Grafdigger's Cage. I have 5 mana on turn 3. Well, we end up playing Wolf Willow Haven on the bottom, but it does the same thing. Yeah. Chat, you were onto something. Now that's what I can do is I can put Wolf Willow Haven on the bottom, and turn 1 Oath of Nissa, turn 2 nothing, and assuming I draw a land, Forest in the top or in Elvish Mystic, I could have put Oath of Nissa on the bottom, and I think it was correct. I ended up putting Wolf Haven on the bottom because I just wanted to spin the wheel a little bit to get a little bit better of a hand, because I thought I could risk it if our opponent mulligans. It's iffy. It's iffy. I mean, if we look at my odds of lose, what are my odds of missing? Think about it. I have 17 forests in the deck, 16 forests in the deck. I got one on my hand. Let's look at the odds of missing. A turn 1 Oath of Nissa when I have 8 elves, right? Yeah, elves are hits too, right? 8 elves and 16 forests. So that's 24. And we are looking at 3 cards. We're just looking at Oath of Nissa. Our odds of hitting are 85%. Right? Our odds of hitting are 85%. But this also doesn't take into account my draw steps. Right? If we extrapolate that into my draw steps, we extrapolate that into our draw steps, we're up to 95%. Because we get to look at 5 draws. 6 draws actually, because we don't need to land until turn 3. Although we don't have as many outs as on turn 3, but yeah. I think keeping Haven would have been a little bit less greedy. Obviously 96% is really strong, and we can also draw other notes, like we have rebuys, right? Like the percentage is actually a little bit higher than the number that I'm putting, because we can also draw other Oath of Nissas, right? So, yeah. Oh, we also know the bottom card. You're right. So it's actually at a 52. You're right. Yeah, it brings it up like a quarter of a percent. Right. So it's like 96%. And in my mind, a decision is worth it if you get something out of it and you're at least 80% favored. And I think this is like 90 some odd percent. Because keeping the Oath of Nissa is way better if I draw a land. Way better if I draw a land. Or an Elvish Mystic. Way better. The upside of the Oath of Nissa is so much more than Wolf Haven, and I'm only 5% to brick. Right? So let's go. Because I can do Karn into Grafdigger's Cage, but they could have Anger of the Gods. And then I have 3 mana and a Karn and a Grafdigger's Cage and nothing to do with my life. So I actually do need one more thing than what I have, which makes Oath of Nissa the correct call. And we have found the one more thing. We found another Wolf Haven anyways, which was another out. Wait, the percentage we have is actually way higher because we could have also just drawn a second Wolf Haven. It's like 98%. Way better. Way better. The level 1 play is like putting it on the bottom of Oath of Nissa. The level 2 play is like, wait, I'm actually 98% to hit. Let's go. 3 fairy, bounce our thing. Unfortunately and the way we played it, actually, because we kept the Oath of Nissa, a Teferi bouncing our Wolf of Haven doesn't own us. We still have turn 3 Karn. With Grafdigger's Cage. We still have it. But now I'm thinking, wait a minute. Enemy did not make a token maker turn 2. Enemy did not make a token maker turn 3. We don't even have to play Karn. Right? We don't even have to play Karn. We can play Vivian, and we have the mana to just Ulamog them. And we can Vivian and make one of our Burning Tree emissaries a 4/4, so an Anger of the Gods doesn't wipe out our mana. But I think if I spoke, I would have talked about the mana that I only had 9 mana next turn. If I have Vivian in play, I tap my 3 lands. I have 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and I play the forest. That's 9, right? And the Wolf Haven is a wash. It doesn't actually increase my mana. It's just free to play. So I vocalized why I didn't play the Vivian is because I only have 9 mana the next turn. And now we're at the point where I'm like, okay, if I get to untap, I can just play God Pharaoh's statue, and they're just locked out, right? They're just locked out of the game. But they have fires. This is bad news. Now my God Pharaoh statue doesn't work. Narset, okay. They got Chain in the Rocks. Okay. Now what? So that first thing we do is we play Wolf of Haven because it's free to play. It costs 2, produces 1, and it gives you 1 devotion. So it costs 2, produces 2, it's free to play. Now what? We have 6 mana. What do we do? We could... I know they have a Chain in the Rocks, right? And they don't have Supreme Verdicts. Their only removal is Anger of the Gods and Chain to the Rocks. But it's weird. We have a lot of lines here. We could go get Sky Sovereign and play it, and blow up Narset, and attack Teferi and attack their face for 2. We could do that. But that means we don't play Vivian. I think we need to play Vivian. Right? I think we need to play Vivian. The fact that we have another card in play in our hand and we have so much mana next turn makes it so I think what we could do is we could Vivian uptick, kill both the enemy planeswalkers, and we can Karn for Darksteel Citadel, but we don't need to because if we play the Wolf of Haven, we actually have 10 mana next turn. We have 11 mana, I think. So we don't actually need to go find Darksteel Citadel to be able to cast our Ulamog. So this card is... We have 2 leftover mana. This card is relatively free. We could go get... Damping... Like, we could get a good Damping Sphere, and then potentially next turn play another Karn, get God Pharaoh statue. We could do that. But unfortunately, the way Fires works is they would just have to pay 2 for their first spell and 3 for their second spell, right? So all that would do is really turn off their castle. So that's kind of a non-starter. And plus, it turns off our Nykthos. We don't want to do that either. The Damping Sphere turns off our Nykthos. But yeah, anyways, let's see what I did. We definitely want to play Vivian and threaten Ulamog. And I didn't want to put... Despite our opponent's only removal being Anger the Gods, I knew that... They Narset and revealed Chain of the Rocks, right? And if they had Anger the Gods, I think they would have played it last turn instead of the Narset. And they didn't reveal Anger of the Gods off the Narset. So I'm like, okay, they would have to top deck Anger of the Gods. I might as well play around the card I know they have, which is Chain of the Rocks, and put a counter on each of my creatures. So like, okay, wait a minute. I look at their deck list. I'm like, okay, Grabdicker's Cage is in play. What is their out? What is their out? Their out is 3 Fairy, bouncing Grabdicker's Cage, Transmogrify into Agent of Treachery. How do we beat that? Pithy Needle. Pithy Needle to Fairy, 3 Fairy. Now we don't have a problem. Now they're just cold. Because Grabdicker's Cage, even if the Agent of Treachery it's still gonna work. Doesn't matter who controls it. It affects both players. So now they're iced. They're Transmogrifies. They're Lukas. They are done. They cannot get rid of them. And they're 3 Fairies. They can't get rid of that either. They have no disenchants. So that's a huge portion of our opponent's game plan, no longer functional. Mono green prison, that's correct. Often against one-dimensional strategies, this deck is a prison deck. Because that's what Karn does. It allows you to get different combo pieces and like place them together, and it's like that's how you stop them. I tax them. All right, so it's at this point. It's at this point that I'm like, okay, I can Ulamog them, but what do I Ulamog? Because here's the problem we have. Here's the problem we have. Enemy, we know they have a Chain of Rocks in their hand. That's the first thing. We know they have a Chain of Rocks. That's one of the unknowns. That's one of the knowns, rather. The second thing we know is that enemy has Transmogrify in their deck. Okay. So the joke is, if I have a Grafdigger's Cage, their Transmogrify turns into 3 in a red exile target creature. Because that's the text of the card. It exiles a creature, and then you reveal from the top into a creature and put it into play. I can't do that. So all you do is exile the creature. So Ulamog doesn't actually do very much. Right? And they have Chain of the Rocks, which exiles it. So what I could do is Ulamog 2 lands. First of all, I Ulamog the Ketria Triome and the Castle Ardenvale. They no longer have a mountain. They can't cast Chain of the Rocks. They're also stuck on 3 lands. They cannot cast Transmogrify. And they cannot draw Yorion and play it, which would be really freaking good for them when they have those 2 omens in play. Right? So if I exile, that's a play that we can make. So that's I go in the tank for like 6 minutes, and then I'm like, okay, this is the plan. Yeah, Triumph is a mountain. That's right. Because the enemy's play next turn, if I let them untap, is draw Yorion, play Yorion, flicker their 2 omens. That's a really good turn for them. They could draw lands, they can play it, and then they go up to 7 mana, and they can start just drawing Agent of Treacheries and casting them. That could be really bad. That's how I can lose this game, is they can just like start to stealing all of our permanents. They can just draw them and play them. So, like, okay, let's get rid of the 2 lands, so Yorion's at least a turn and a half away, if not 2 turns. And if enemy wants to not risk it, they would have to sack their omens on their upkeep. Right? Because they don't need the lands untapped. They would sack the omens in the upkeep looking for lands, and then their Yorion is worse. But yes, taxing their mana is the plan. Taxing their mana. What is preventing them using fires? So fires says you can cast spells only during your own turn, and the spells are free as long as they cost equal to or less than the lands you have. They only have 3 lands. So they can't draw Yorion on play it, because they only have 3 lands. And I didn't attack with Burning Tree Emissary because I didn't want to lose my mana. I needed the Nykthos to work, and they would just triple block our Duder. So enemy drew a Triome. And this was pretty bad for me. They exiled our Ulamog, and then they chained it with Transmogrify, and then they chained the rocks our Burning Tree Emissary. Now we're low on mana. We don't really have much going on. Now what do we do? So we take a look at our mana here. Our Nykthos taps for 5. So we can use our Elvish Mystic. Draw Nissa, yeah. We can use our Elvish Mystic in a forest, tap Nykthos, that's 5 mana. We can play Nissa, untap that forest. Now our Nykthos taps for 7. We have 7. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, I think is how much mana we have. See, Elvish Mystic, Forest, tap that for 5. Play Nissa. Oh, we have to untap the Nykthos. Yeah, so we have to like untap the Nykthos, and then we can tap the Nykthos for 7. We have 10 mana. Okay, we have 10 mana. What do we do with 10 mana? We have a Karn. We have a Karn at 2, so it's a free -2. It's a free -2 here. And I'm thinking, okay, what I could do. There's a lot of things we could do here. We can Verdurous Gearhulk, right? We can go Nissa Verdurous Gearhulk and attack. Because we have 10 mana. We can go Nissa, get a Dark Citadel and attack with it. It's like we can -2 this card, and if we get Dark Citadel, we actually get another mana. So we can go up to 11 mana. So we can like Nissa, we can -2 Karn, Dark Citadel, play Dark Citadel, use Nissa. Then after that we have 6 mana. We can play Karn, and then we can play. We have lots of options. And what I actually, yeah, can they even hit Sky Sovereign? They can just Agent Treachery, right? That's pretty bad for me. So I end up just going the tank here. Just go really deep in the tank. I'm like, okay, the world is my oyster. I spent like 10 minutes on my turn. I even got the inactivity time reminder because I was thinking for so long. I actually called a judge at this point because I actually asked them, because I was thinking about getting Godpharaoh statue, whether they actually do have to pay the mana for their spells. And my understanding is that they do. So I ended up not making that play. I was going to. They do have to make the mana. They do have to pay for their spells. Is what I was trying to say. They do have to pay at least 2 mana, even if they use the Fire's Invention ability. Is my understanding. But I ended up, and I also asked, like, okay, because what I could do is I can minus this Karn for Godpharaoh statue, and I can then minus Karn for Damping Sphere, and then I can play them both. So their first spell will cost 2, and their second spell will cost 3. The problem with that, I asked the judge, wait, does Damping Sphere turn off Nissa? Right? Because Damping Sphere's text is, if a land would produce more than 1 mana, it produces 1 colorless instead of a quantity and type, right? And it turns out that Damping Sphere does not actually stop Nissa, which is weird. Because like when you have a Nissa out, your forest taps for 2, but it turns out like Nissa is like a triggered ability. And so your land isn't producing 2, it's producing 1+1, which is weird. Yeah. Yeah, it's like, yeah, it's weird. It's the Nissa that's doing it, yeah. So the Damping Sphere doesn't actually affect the Nissa for future reference. Right, it's not the land that's giving you 2 mana, it's just tapping it just happens to give you 2. Nissa's giving you the other one, right. So I know it's 10 mana, so I'm like, okay, let's Gear Hulk, let's go. You went saying for 8 minutes? Yeah, man. It was like this was the most important turn of the game, and I have a 40-minute clock. Why not? And I was talking to a judge for 5 of the minutes because we were looking up rulings on Damping Sphere in Nissa, and we were looking up rulings on Godpharaoh statue and Fires of Invention. Same with Damping Sphere and Fires of Invention. We were just like, a huge portion of that was me talking to a judge. So I was talking to a judge on Discord that during this time. All right, so they hit our Nissa with an Ether Gust. I'm like, okay, what am I gonna draw that's better than Nissa? Probably nothing. So our Verger's Gear Hulk has trample, so they're not blocking that one. So it's either chump the 5/5 into 3/3 or just triple block the 3/3 are their two options basically. And so here's the problem. Here's the problem we have. I may look like I'm winning. I'm actually kind of not, right? Because think about it. Imagine enemy draws a land. If enemy draws a land, they draw Yorion, play it, flicker both their Chain to the Rocks and their two Omens. So under the two Chain to the Rocks are a Nykthos and a Burning Tree Emissary, right? So they flicker their Chain to the Rocks, they come back into play, they choose to take my 5/5 Gear Hulk and my 5/5 Burning Tree Emissary. I get a Burning Tree Emissary back and a Nykthos that I can't really use that much. And they get to flicker the Omen of Sea and the Omen of the Sun. So they get to gain 2 life, play more tokens, draw a scryed card. They can even draw Ether Gust. They can draw another Ether Gust and play it because Fire's Invention is gone. And it will come back later, right? Actually, I don't think they can do that, right? No, that would be the only spell they play. Yeah, they could totally do that. Yeah, they only play one spell that turn, which would be Yorion. They just flickered a bunch of stuff. So they could totally draw Ether Gust and play it on their instep after they draw with Omen of the Sea. So I'm not actually winning this turn. Like, I know it looks like my position is really strong, but I'm kind of out of Karn targets. I'm kind of out of them. And because I boarded in the Heart of Kiran, and I gotta win with the Sky Sovereign. If they draw a land, if they draw a land, I have to win the Sky Sovereign. Because that's all I have. No, he wouldn't be tapped out because it's three to draw Yorion. I'm assuming they draw a land for their turn, Doom 11. If they draw a 5th land, they need to draw a 5th land to even cast the Yorion. So. And so enemy could have sacked an Omen of the Sea or Omen of the Sun to scry 2 looking for a lands. But my opponent made the evaluation that they actually could not win the game if they didn't have both Omens. So they just they left the Omens in play. They're like, okay, I actually have to flicker both of these to have a shot. They drew a random card. It was not a land. So. But this game was actually way closer than it looked because it literally, if they draw a land, I am not in a very good spot. I have a 1/1 and a 2/2 and a Nissa versus Yorion, 2 tokens, and an Omen of the Sea, and they can just sack the Omens of the Sea to scry. I am not in a good spot. Yeah, it was an exhausting match. It was an hour long. Yeah.